everyone, welcome back to Be My Cook. Today we're going to be making sarmale. This is a traditional family recipe that I've been making for years, so I hope you enjoy it. So as far as the pork goes in our sarmale, I usually will buy some pork stew meat that comes in some chunks like this, and I'm going to grind it myself with my KitchenAid grinder. Now, you don't have to get this. What you can do is the store already has ground pork and you can use that, but I like to know what's in my pork, so I like to grind the meat myself. We're going to mix it with our ground beef. Now, I've turned on my pan to get my water to start to heat up so that I can put our cabbage in there, but I have to prep our cabbage first. So here it is. It's pretty big. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of this vinegar in there, at least a quarter cup, in my pot of water while I prep my cabbage. So to prep our cabbage, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bottom part off, because we don't need that. And then I'm just going to take my knife and go next to the core and put my knife in as far as it'll go. And be careful and bring it out and go all around the core, pushing it in, because we're going to get rid of this core. That's what we want, because we want our cabbage leaves to fall off of that when we're cooking it. We don't want it to be attached anywhere. Now we have what I want. Now our leaves are going to detach right here on all the sides because we did that. Now I have a little bit of something here I want to get rid of. And I'm going to cut these big ribs off anyway on all the leaves before we actually stuff it with our filling. Okay, our cabbage is now ready to go in. Make sure that when you have your cabbage, the outer leaves, you pull all those off. You don't want those, because a lot of times they're brown and discolored, and you don't want those for your sarmale. Now, the reason why I put the vinegar in this pot is because in traditional Romanian sarmale, they pickle their cabbage most of the year in these big wooden crates or some sort of barrel, and the cabbage is a pickled cabbage and it's very pliable. Well, we don't have that here, or at least I don't. So I put vinegar in my pot to give it that more of a sour taste like it would be if it was pickled. So I'm also going to add a little bit of salt, about 2 teaspoons of salt in my pot as well, and we're going to boil this cabbage until the leaves come off and they're pliable, and I'll show you that step. So now I'm going to chop up 1 large onion and 1 small onion and 4 stalks of celery chopped fine, 4 pieces of bacon chopped. Okay, we're going to check on our cabbage. The water is just now starting to boil, and you see the difference here. It's green, and here it's turned a different color. That's because of the vinegar. It's supposed to happen that way, so you're all right. Nothing's happening down here yet, but our leaves are going to start to come off in this area, and that's what we want. So let's just leave our cabbage to cook. Don't touch it. Don't try to pull the leaves off yet. It's not ready. Now we're ready to make the filling. Now I have my pan heating up, and I'm just going to add my bacon to the pan and let that come to a slight crisp. And we're going to let that cook for about a minute or 2, just to let it release some of its fat. And we're not going to drain this, we're going to use that. Let's take a look at our cabbage. See, some of the leaves are starting to come off. That's what we want. Just leave them in there. Now we're not going to let our bacon get crisp. I'm going to add in the onions now. And our celery. Just stir those around for a couple minutes until the onions start to get translucent. Our onions are now translucent. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of thyme, 1 teaspoon of paprika. It is not the smoked kind. And 1 teaspoon of pepper and 4 tablespoons of parsley. We're just going to mix this around now. This is our filling for our sarmale. Now, of course, you can adjust any of these seasonings the way that you would like. Now, the reason why I didn't put that much salt in here is because the bacon is salty, and when I usually put the layers of sarmale together in my crock pot, I salt the layers as well. So we're not going to overdo it with the filling having too much salt. Now I want you to see that this filling is not swimming in oil or any kind of fat. It has some in here. I did not drain this. And our filling is done. We just have to let the spices mingle for a minute or two and we're done. I'm going to turn the flame off and we're going to let this sit for at least a half an hour to cool down. You do not want to put your cabbage rolls with hot filling in with your meat mixture and then roll them up. So you have to let this cool. So what I'm going to do now, I have 3/4 of a cup of white instant rice and I'm just going to rinse it. Now we do that just to get some of that starch off of the rice. So I have been continuing taking our leaves off of our cabbage and letting them cool on this tray because it's very hot when you're working with these pieces of cabbage. Our cabbage is still boiling and we will allow that to shed some more leaves for us and then we'll start to roll. In the meantime, we have our beef and our pork. Our rice has been rinsed and our filling is cool. So we're just going to mix all those together. What I suggest you do is mix the pork and the beef together first before you add the filling and the rice, just so it's all incorporated. This looks pretty good. It looks like it's all one meat now. Now I'm going to go ahead and add our rice. Let's incorporate that. Now you don't want to add too much rice because it's not going to be traditional and they don't have a lot of rice in their sarmale. It's mostly the beef and pork. And remember, it's going to expand. And if you add more rice, they're not going to be so fluffy and tender. Okay, it should look like that. Now we're going to add our filling. Make sure that your filling is at least at room temperature before you add it to your meat mixture. This is what it's supposed to look like. Now when our cabbage gets done, we're going to start to stuff our cabbage rolls. I just pulled out the bottom half of the cabbage. These are the smaller leaves. I will use them if I have to, but right now I'm just going to drain it and let it come to room temperature because I may use that to put some of these leaves on the top of my sarmale when they're cooking. All right, now it's time to stuff our cabbage. I've already taken the vein off of the cabbage here. Now, in Romania, they have giant cabbage. I don't, but I will try to show you what they would normally do. I'm going to cut down the side of this cabbage So I have this side. Now these cabbages are really small, so I'm going to go ahead and grab just a little bit of filling, and we're going to wrap this up. Now a lot of times they do this inside their palm of their hand. I cannot do that. It doesn't work for me, so I'm going to show you how I do it on the pan. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it don't, but I'm going to show you. And then you just kind of stuff this in and make a little pocket. And now it's together. Might have to stuff in the other side, but this is how they look. They're very small. And one funny question is, whenever you're making sarmale, your family will come in and say the ultimate question: how many did you make? It's so funny to me because I know my husband, he counts them, or he wants me to keep a count, because they like to know how many they can have for how many days. This recipe is a little bit more complicated than your weeknight dinner recipes, but remember, depending on the size of your family, you are going to eat this for at least 2 to 3 days. So there won't be any cooking for 2 to 3 days, so that's a plus. Now I'm just going to set this inside my crock pot, and in the crock pot I have 1 cup of tomato juice and nothing else right now. I'm just going to set it in there. And we're going to continue. Now because this has a big hard vein on it, this side, when I cut it, it's going to be very difficult to make into a small cabbage roll. No matter how much you cook it, this big hard vein is going to get in your way, and this part is kind of rigid as well. That's why in Romania they use big cabbages. I tried to get the biggest one I could find. That way when they cut it in half, they don't have to worry about using that side, and their cabbages roll up really well. Well, let's try another one. This is always the side that's going to be a problem, so remember that. I try to grab that first and try to roll it the best that I can, kind of cover that piece, and then I kind of swing this one over like you're making a burrito and roll it up the best that you can, as tight as you can. See, this side doesn't want to conform because it's that edge, but I'm going to try to make it conform. Let's see how far I get. This side is okay, so we're just going to push this side down. This side, some of my filling's coming out, but I'm going to do the best that I can to try to keep that in. There we go. Now it's, see how small they are? They're really small. You just want to make sure that your cabbage doesn't come out. Okay, and let's continue. In the bottom of my pan, I have my bigger cabbage rolls that I made, and on top of that, I'm going to add some sauerkraut. Now this is a 14.5-ounce can of sauerkraut, and I'm just going to put that on the top of my cabbage rolls. Then I'm going to add a little bit of pepper, not too much. I'm going to add a little bit of salt. You want to do this in layers. And I'm going to add a few shakes of dill weed. Now normally I would use fresh dill and put it between the layers, just 1 sprig or 2, but my store didn't have any this week, so I have to use dried, but that's okay. Now I'm just going to layer the other ones in the opposite direction in my crock pot as I press down. Now remember, the bottom of the crock pot has some tomato juice, and that's going to keep it nice and moist so that they don't burn to the bottom of the crock pot. And it's important to put your cabbage rolls in different directions and let whoever it is that's serving, let them know about that so that they don't tear them all. Now we're back with our sauerkraut on top, juice and all. That's only going to make them taste better. Save some for the top. Our pepper. And our salt. Now you don't want to get them too salty, so be aware. Now I'm going to add some tomato juice on top of this layer, just to make sure we have enough liquid in here. And that's about another cup. We don't want to fill it to the rim, because when these things start to cook, they'll start to puff up and your lid will come off and it'll start dripping all over. Let's put these in the different direction. These are the smaller ones. Now some of you can get maybe 30 of them in here. I have like 25. But of course, like I said, I made them the way I wanted to make them. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that, you know, some of you are better cabbage rollers than I am. Still going to taste the same. Let's put this on the top with the juice. Now we're going to add just a teensy bit more salt. And let's get some more dill on the top. Now I'm just shaking this on just so I can actually see the dill on top. And that's good. I don't really have a measurement for that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a few bay leaves on the top. This is important, to put some bay leaves on. Very important. It gives it that special taste. Now on top of that, I've saved some of my cabbage pieces, and I'm just going to put some of that on top. I find that these cook a lot better, and they're a lot more tender if you cook them in the crock pot. Now for years I used to cook them on the stove for a few hours, and they were good, but I think the crock pot is just so much better. They really do need at least 7 hours on low to have all the flavors mingled together and make the cabbage even more softer, and it's really, really good. All right, now I'm going to cover this with some more tomato juice. And I want to add just a little bit of water, maybe about 1 cup of water. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I'm pretty close to my rim. If it needs more water, I'll add it periodically, but I shouldn't have to. Let's get the lid on this. Let's turn it around, plug it in, and get this started. Okay, so we want to put it on low and 7 hours at least. And you're all set. Okay, we got a little bit over an hour to go, so let's take a look at our sarmale. Oh yeah, they're bubbling away, looking good. Let's just leave them alone. In the meantime, we are going to make mamaliga, and this is what you're going to need. Some corn grits, also known as polenta. Now I have 1 cup and a half a teaspoon of salt, and I've already put that in the pan. And we are going to turn on the flame, and we're going to start to cook this. This is a cornmeal that is a substitute for bread. So traditionally you would always see sarmale served with this cornmeal or mamaliga. Now as soon as our water comes to a boil, I'm going to add in my 1 cup of polenta. Our water is starting to boil, so I'm just going to add in our polenta a small amount at a time and stir it so there's no lumps. Gradually pour it in a little at a time. Continue to stir. This grain is going to soak up all this water, and I'll show you what it looks like when we get it done. It's going to become really thick, but you have to cook it for around 30 minutes to make sure that the grain is cooked. And I'll show you what that looks like when I get to that stage. I have put a lid on this and I turned our flame down to low. Now you have to do that because this takes a while to cook. Do not keep it on a high flame. Now we're not there yet, but I want to show you just how thick this is getting. And we only added 1 cup. So this is cooking very well. Keep your eye on it. Do not walk away from it. And you have to continuously stir it because it will bubble up on you and burn you pretty bad. It's been cooking for a good 10-12 minutes now, so I'm going to continue to let it cook. When it starts to pull away from the pan, it's almost there, then it'll be done. Our mamaliga is now done, and I'm going to put it on our plate. Just going to dump the whole thing right on this plate. Kind of mound it up there. And everybody take whatever they want off of this plate and put it with their sarmale. You don't want to leave it too long because it'll start to get hardened a little bit if you leave it too long. Okay, and our sarmale are done. So I'm going to show you how I serve it. Here is our sarmale. I just took the lid off. They are now done. And I'm going to serve some up. Let me peel back some of the cabbage that we have on top. Let's grab a couple. You don't want to tear them, so be very gentle with them. Now we're going to get some sauce and pour over the top. There we go. Let me show you how I'm going to serve these. So here are our sarmale. They're always served with a hot pepper, some sour cream on top, with a mamaliga on the side, and these are wonderful. These sarmale are made all year long, especially in the winter time. Traditionally, they're eaten with plum brandy called suica, and if you don't have that, you can also have some red wine. Now in the Transylvania region of Romania, the sarmale are a lot bigger, and the ones in Moldova or the Montania region are smaller. I have one big one here on the end, and most of these are smaller. So if you'd like to see more recipes from me, just subscribe to my channel, like and share, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching. Bye.